Imagine standing at the crossroads of your life where every decision you make, every thought you think has the power to transform your destiny completely. Picture a world where your dreams aren't just fantasies but blueprints waiting to be built, where success isn't reserved for the lucky few but available to anyone who understands the secret formula. What if I told you that over 80 years ago a man spent 20 years of his life interviewing 500 of the most successful people in America, including Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford and Thomas Edison, to uncover the exact principles that separate those who achieve greatness from those who merely dream about it? This isn't just another success story. This is the foundation upon which countless millionaires, billionaires and world changers have built their empires. Today we're diving deep into Napoleon Hill's masterpiece, Think and Grow Rich, the book that has transformed more lives, created more wealth and inspired more success than perhaps any other book in history. So get comfortable, open your mind and prepare to discover the 13 proven steps that can turn your desires into reality, your thoughts into fortune and your life into the masterpiece it was always meant to be. Napoleon Hill's journey began with a simple assignment that would consume 2 decades of his life and change the course of success literature forever. As a young journalist, Hill was given the opportunity to interview the steel magnate Andrew Carnegie, one of the wealthiest men in the world. During that interview, Carnegie issued a challenge that would define Hill's life purpose. He asked Hill if he would be willing to dedicate 20 years to studying the principles of success by interviewing the most accomplished individuals of the era without any guarantee of compensation. Hill had just 29 seconds to decide, and in that brief moment he made a choice that would eventually benefit millions of people around the world. He said yes. What Carnegie understood and what Hill would spend the next 2 decades proving was that success is not an accident, not a matter of luck, not determined by your background or education, but rather the result of applying specific proven principles that anyone can learn and implement. This revelation forms the cornerstone of everything Think and Grow Rich teaches. Success has a formula, and once you understand that formula you can replicate it in your own life regardless of where you're starting from today. The first and most fundamental principle that Hill discovered is the power of desire. But this isn't just ordinary wanting or casual wishing or hopeful thinking. The desire Hill speaks of is an obsession, a burning all-consuming definiteness of purpose that commands your attention, dominates your thoughts and drives your actions. Hill explains that there is a vast difference between wishing for something and being ready to receive it. No one is ready for a thing until they believe they can acquire it. This belief requires that you know exactly what you want with crystal clarity, down to the precise amount if it's money, the exact position if it's a career, the specific outcome if it's a goal. Vague desires produce vague results. Specific desires backed by definite plans and burning obsession produce specific results. Hill provides a 6-step method for transforming desire into its monetary equivalent, and these steps apply to any goal you might pursue. First, fix in your mind the exact amount of money you desire or the exact goal you want to achieve. Be specific, be definite, be clear. Second, determine exactly what you intend to give in return for what you desire. There is no such thing as something for nothing, and the universe demands fair exchange. Third, establish a definite date when you intend to possess what you desire. A goal without a deadline is merely a dream. Fourth, create a definite plan for carrying out your desire and begin at once, whether you're ready or not, to put this plan into action. Fifth, write out a clear, concise statement describing the amount you intend to acquire, what you'll give in exchange, the time limit for acquisition and the plan through which you'll achieve it. Sixth, read your written statement aloud twice daily, once just before sleeping and once after waking. And as you read, see and feel and believe yourself already in possession of what you desire. This last step is where most people fail because it requires faith, imagination and emotional intensity. Hill discovered through his research that the most successful people didn't just think about their goals occasionally. They obsessed over them constantly, they visualized them vividly, they felt the emotions of already having achieved them, and this process reprogrammed their subconscious mind to recognize opportunities, to generate creative ideas and to maintain persistence through inevitable obstacles. One of the most powerful examples Hill shares is the story of Edwin Barnes, who desired to become a business partner of the great inventor Thomas Edison. Barnes didn't just wish, he didn't just hope, he made a definite decision that he would work with Edison, not for him but with him as a partner. When Barnes first arrived at Edison's laboratory, he looked like a tramp. He had no money, he had no connections, he had no apparent way of achieving his burning desire. But he had something more powerful than any of these. He had definiteness of purpose backed by unshakable faith. Edison later recalled that there was something different about Barnes, something in his expression that communicated determination unlike anything Edison had seen before. Barnes started in the most menial position available, but he kept his desire alive, he kept his vision clear, and he kept watching for his opportunity. That opportunity came when Edison invented a new dictating machine called the Ediphone, and his salespeople were skeptical about it. Barnes recognized what others couldn't see. He knew this machine could be sold successfully, and he approached Edison with such enthusiasm and confidence that Edison gave him the chance. Barnes became the exclusive distributor of the Ediphone, made a fortune from it, and achieved his original desire of becoming a business associate of Thomas Edison. The lesson here is profound. Barnes succeeded not because he had advantages, not because he had resources, not because circumstances favored him, but because he made a definite decision backed by burning desire, and he refused to recognize the possibility of failure. The second major principle Hill discovered is faith. But again, this isn't religious faith necessarily, although it can include that. This is the state of mind which may be induced by auto-suggestion, the practice of feeding your mind with positive affirmations and vivid visualizations until your subconscious accepts them as instructions to be carried out. Faith is the starting point of all accumulation of riches, and faith is the basis of all miracles and mysteries which cannot be analyzed by science. Faith is the only known antidote for failure. Hill explains that faith is a state of mind that you can develop by giving your subconscious mind repeated instructions through the principle of auto-suggestion. Your subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between constructive and destructive thoughts. It works with the material you feed it through your thought impulses. If you repeatedly tell yourself that you're capable, that you're successful, that you're worthy of achieving your goals, your subconscious mind accepts these statements as fact and begins working to make them reality. Conversely, if you constantly feed yourself thoughts of doubt, fear, and limitation, your subconscious accepts these equally and creates circumstances consistent with those beliefs. This is why Hill emphasizes the importance of emotional intensity when practicing auto-suggestion. Your subconscious mind responds most powerfully to thoughts that are mixed with strong emotions, particularly the emotions of faith and desire. When you read your written statement of your definite major purpose, you must infuse it with feeling. You must see yourself already in possession of what you desire. You must feel the joy, the satisfaction, the pride of having achieved it even before physical reality has caught up with your mental reality. One of the most famous demonstrations of faith's power that Hill includes comes from his own life, specifically the story of how he applied these principles to help his son who was born without ears and therefore without any natural ability to hear. Doctors told Hill that his son would never hear, never speak, would be deaf for life. But Hill refused to accept this verdict. Instead, he planted in his son's mind through constant repetition the absolute conviction that despite his physical limitation he would be able to hear. Hill's son grew up believing he would hear, and this faith manifested in ways the doctors said were impossible. The boy eventually developed limited hearing ability and went on to live a normal life working for a hearing aid company helping others with similar challenges. This story illustrates what Hill calls one of the great truths of life, that whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. The third principle is auto-suggestion, which is the medium for influencing the subconscious mind. This is the agency of communication between the conscious thinking mind and the subconscious mind where thought habits reside. Auto-suggestion is self-suggestion, the practice of deliberately feeding your subconscious mind the thoughts and beliefs you want it to act upon. The challenge most people face is that they leave their subconscious mind open to random influences, negative news, pessimistic people, limiting beliefs absorbed unconsciously from their environment. Success requires that you take control of what enters your subconscious, and the primary tool for doing this is the repetition of emotionally charged affirmations related to your definite major purpose. Hill provides specific instructions for practicing auto-suggestion effectively. First, you must have a clear mental picture of what you want. The more vivid and detailed, the better. Second, you must feel intense emotion as you hold this picture in your mind, because emotion is the element that gives your thoughts power and penetration into the subconscious. Third, you must repeat this process consistently, ideally twice per day at minimum, with the most powerful times being just before sleep when your subconscious is most receptive, and immediately upon waking before the day's activities clutter your mind. Fourth, you must believe that what you're visualizing is already becoming reality, even if you see no evidence yet in the physical world. This practice might seem simple, even simplistic to skeptics, but Hill interviewed hundreds of successful people who attributed their achievements to exactly this process. They became what they thought about most of the time. Their outer world eventually reflected their inner world, and the same principle works in reverse, which is why Hill warns so strongly against negative thinking, worry, doubt, and fear. These emotions also penetrate the subconscious, also influence your actions, and also create circumstances, but circumstances you don't want. The fourth principle is specialized knowledge. Hill makes a crucial distinction that surprises many people. He argues that general knowledge, no matter how great the quantity, is of little use in the accumulation of wealth or achievement of success. What matters is specialized knowledge focused specifically on the thing you want to achieve. Moreover, you don't necessarily need to possess all this knowledge yourself. What you need is access to it through the knowledge of others organized into definite plans of action. This principle democratizes success because it means you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You simply need to know which smart people to have in your room and how to organize their knowledge toward your definite purpose. Andrew Carnegie himself was a perfect example of this principle. Carnegie admitted that he knew very little about the technical side of steel manufacturing, but he employed chemists, engineers, and technicians who possessed specialized knowledge in these areas. What Carnegie did possess was the ability to organize these specialists, coordinate their efforts, and direct their knowledge toward the achievement of specific objectives. This made him one of the wealthiest men in history, not through his own technical knowledge but through his ability to harness and direct the specialized knowledge of others. Hill encourages readers to take inventory of their current knowledge, identify the gaps between where they are and where they want to be, and then acquire the specialized knowledge needed to bridge that gap. This might come through formal education, through self-study, through mentorship, through experience, or through partnerships with those who already possess what you lack. The key point is that ignorance is no excuse, and poverty of knowledge is no longer an acceptable limitation in an age where information is more accessible than at any time in history. The fifth principle is imagination, which Hill calls the workshop of the mind where all plans are fashioned. There are two forms of imagination Hill explains: synthetic imagination, which arranges old concepts, ideas, and facts into new combinations, and creative imagination, through which new ideas are revealed, often through what we call hunches or inspiration. Most people use only synthetic imagination if they use imagination at all, but the greatest achievements come when creative imagination is activated, often through intense desire combined with specialized knowledge organized into definite plans. Every material thing that exists today was first created in someone's imagination. The device you're listening to this on, the chair you're sitting in, the building you're inside, the vehicle you drive, all of these began as thought impulses in human imagination before they became physical reality. This means that imagination is the starting point of all fortune, all invention, all achievement. If you can conceive it clearly in your imagination and you back that conception with faith and definite plans, you can achieve it in reality. Hill shares the story of a young clergyman who used imagination to transform what appeared to be a hopeless financial situation. The clergyman needed money to complete his education, but he had no apparent source, no wealthy relatives, no savings, nothing but a burning desire and active imagination. He imagined a plan where he would preach to a different congregation each Sunday, not for a fixed salary but for voluntary contributions. He imagined exactly how he would present himself, what he would say, how he would inspire people to contribute generously. He wrote out his plan in detail. He visualized himself successfully executing it, and then he acted. Within 1 year he had raised more than enough money to complete his education, all because he used his imagination to create a solution where others saw only problems. The sixth principle is organized planning. Desire, faith, autosuggestion, specialized knowledge and imagination are all essential, but they must be translated into action through organized planning. Hill emphasizes that plans must be definite, they must be practical, and they must be written out in clear detail. Moreover, you must be willing to revise your plans as often as necessary, because failure of a plan doesn't mean failure of purpose. Success may be just one revised plan away. Hill provides specific instructions for creating effective plans. First, ally yourself with a group of people who will help you create and execute your plans. This is what Hill calls a mastermind alliance, which we'll discuss more thoroughly in a moment. Second, before forming your alliance, decide what advantages and benefits you can offer in return for their cooperation. Nobody works for nothing, and fair exchange is essential. Third, arrange to meet with your mastermind group at least twice a week and more often if possible. Fourth, maintain perfect harmony between yourself and every member of your group. If harmony cannot be maintained, the alliance will fail. Hill also discusses the importance of leadership in executing plans. He identifies 11 factors that contribute to leadership failure, and these are worth noting because avoiding them dramatically increases your chances of success. These failures include inability to organize details, unwillingness to render humble service, expectation of pay for what they know rather than what they do, fear of competition from followers, lack of imagination, selfishness, intemperance, disloyalty, emphasis on authority rather than leadership, emphasis on title rather than results, and several others. True leaders, Hill explains, inspire cooperation through encouragement, not through fear, and they led by example, demonstrating the qualities they expect from others. The seventh principle, and one of the most powerful Hill discovered, is the mastermind. Hill defines the mastermind as coordination of knowledge and effort between two or more people who work toward a definite purpose in a spirit of harmony. The mastermind principle creates something greater than the sum of individual contributions. It generates what Hill calls a third mind, a psychic phenomenon that enhances the thinking power and creative ability of every member. Hill learned this principle directly from Andrew Carnegie, who attributed his entire fortune to the power of his mastermind alliance. Carnegie surrounded himself with more than 20 people who contributed specialized knowledge in areas where Carnegie himself was weak. These individuals worked in perfect harmony toward definite objectives, and their combined intelligence, creativity, and effort created results that no single individual, however talented, could have achieved alone. The mastermind principle works on two levels, Hill explains. The economic level, where specialized knowledge of different people is coordinated toward a common purpose, and the psychic level, where the association of minds actually stimulates additional creative energy, insights, and possibilities. This is why being around positive, success-oriented people elevates your own thinking, while being around negative, defeated people drags you down. Your mind is constantly influenced by the minds it associates with, for better or worse. Hill encourages every person seeking success to carefully construct their own mastermind alliance, even if it starts with just one or two people. These should be individuals who share your values, who believe in your vision, who possess knowledge or abilities you lack, and who are willing to work in harmony toward mutual benefit. Regular meetings, open communication, and absolute honesty are essential to keeping the alliance strong and productive. The eighth principle is one of the most controversial yet most powerful in Hill's entire philosophy: the mystery of sex transmutation. Hill discovered in his research that the most successful people invariably possessed highly developed sex natures, but they had learned to transmute this energy, redirect it, channel it toward creative and productive purposes. Hill is careful to clarify that he's not advocating for repression or suppression of sex energy, which is unhealthy, but rather for transmutation, the switching of the mind from thoughts of physical expression to thoughts of some other nature. Sex energy, Hill explains, is the most powerful of all human desires, and when this energy is redirected toward creative expression, business achievement, artistic production, or other constructive purposes, it becomes an irresistible force. This explains why many great leaders, inventors, and entrepreneurs experienced their most productive periods when sex energy was being transmuted into their work. Hill points to numerous examples, including Napoleon, who rose and fell in correlation with his romantic life, and many other historical figures whose achievements clearly reflected the transmutation of sex energy. The practical application of this principle involves disciplining your thoughts and your energy, especially during periods of creative work. Instead of dissipating vital energy through excessive physical expression, you consciously direct that energy toward your definite major purpose, toward solving problems, toward creative breakthroughs, toward building your business or career. Many people, Hill notes, never achieve greatness because they squander this most powerful form of energy instead of harnessing it. The ninth principle is the subconscious mind, which Hill describes as the connecting link between the finite human mind and infinite intelligence. Your subconscious mind functions voluntarily whether you make any effort to influence it or not, but it can be directed through the practice of autosuggestion as discussed earlier. The subconscious mind never sleeps, never rests, and is continually working with the material you've given it through your dominant thoughts and your emotionally charged beliefs. Hill emphasizes that the subconscious mind is more susceptible to thoughts mixed with emotion than it is to cold intellectual thoughts. The 7 major positive emotions are desire, faith, love, sex, enthusiasm, romance, and hope. The 7 major negative emotions are fear, jealousy, hatred, revenge, greed, superstition, and anger. For your subconscious to work constructively toward your goals, you must deliberately and consistently feed it positive emotional stimuli while guarding against negative emotional influences. One of the most practical applications of understanding the subconscious is in the practice of giving it problems to solve just before sleep. Hill explains that the subconscious mind continues working on whatever you've given it as its last instruction before sleeping, and often you'll wake with solutions, insights, or creative ideas that your conscious mind couldn't produce. Many successful people Hill interviewed confirmed this practice, deliberately posing questions or challenges to their subconscious before sleep and receiving answers upon waking or even during dreams. The 10th principle is the brain, which Hill describes as both a broadcasting and receiving station for thought. While Hill acknowledges that science hadn't yet proven all aspects of thought transmission, he was convinced through his research that thought can be transmitted from one mind to another, and that highly creative people often tap into what appears to be a universal source of intelligence, receiving ideas that seem to come from beyond their own individual knowledge. This principle relates closely to the master mind concept because when minds are coordinated in harmony, there appears to be an actual multiplication of mental power, not just addition. Hill observed that great ideas often came to his research subjects during or shortly after master mind meetings, as if the combined mental energy opened channels to higher intelligence. While this might sound mystical or unscientific, Hill insisted that the practical results were undeniable regardless of whether the mechanism could be fully explained. The 11th principle is the sixth sense, which Hill calls the door to the temple of wisdom. This is the principle through which creative visions, hunches, and inspiration are received. Hill admits that this principle cannot be fully explained in rational terms, but he insists that it's real and that it can be developed through the application of the other 12 principles. The sixth sense often warns of impending dangers, enabling avoidance of them, and often reveals opportunities that logical thinking wouldn't uncover. Hill himself practiced a unique technique for activating his sixth sense, something he called his invisible counselors. Each night before sleeping, Hill would hold an imaginary council meeting with 9 people he admired most, including Emerson, Paine, Edison, Darwin, Lincoln, and others. He would pose questions to these imaginary counselors and engage in discussions with them about his problems and his plans. Initially, Hill admits this was merely imagination, but over time something remarkable happened. These imaginary counselors began taking on distinct personalities, offering advice and perspectives that Hill himself hadn't consciously thought of. Whether this was his subconscious mind synthesizing knowledge he'd absorbed about these men or whether it was something more, Hill didn't claim to know, but the practical value was immense. The 12th principle is perhaps the most important yet most challenging: persistence. Hill observed that lack of persistence is one of the major causes of failure. Thousands of people, perhaps millions, start enthusiastically toward their goals, but at the first sign of opposition or the first experience of defeat they quit. Persistence is a state of mind that can be cultivated, and like all states of mind, it's based on definite causes including definiteness of purpose, desire, self-reliance, definiteness of plans, accurate knowledge, cooperation, willpower and habit. Hill notes that the majority of people are ready to throw away their aims and purposes at the first sign of opposition or misfortune. A few carry on despite all opposition until they attain their goal. These few are the Edisons, the Fords, the Carnegies, and they demonstrate that persistence is usually the difference between success and failure. The good news, Hill explains, is that persistence is a mental attitude that can be developed through definite, deliberate practice. One of the most effective ways to develop persistence, Hill suggests, is to work with a mastermind group whose members encourage and support your continued effort. When your own willpower weakens, the combined will of your alliance can sustain you. Additionally, persistence becomes easier when you have a burning desire, a definite purpose, specialized knowledge, definite plans and absolute faith. These elements work together to create unstoppable momentum even in the face of seemingly impossible obstacles. Hill shares numerous examples of people who persisted far beyond what ordinary people would consider reasonable. One of the most inspiring is the story of R.U. Darby and his uncle, who caught gold fever during the gold rush, went west, staked a claim and began digging. They found ore suggesting significant gold, and in their excitement they covered up the mine, returned home and raised money from friends and family to buy mining machinery. They shipped the machinery west, began mining, and everything went perfectly until suddenly the vein of gold disappeared. They kept digging, desperately searching for the vein again, but found nothing. Finally, discouraged and defeated, they sold the machinery to a junkman for a few $100s and went home. The junkman called in a mining engineer to examine the mine, and the engineer made a simple calculation that Darby and his uncle had failed to make. The engineer determined that the vein of gold continued just 3 feet from where Darby had stopped drilling. The junkman took up the drilling, went 3 feet further and found millions of dollars in gold. Darby learned a lesson from this experience that transformed his life. He learned that you should never quit just because you've met with temporary defeat, and that often success is closer than it appears. Darby later became a phenomenally successful insurance salesman because he remembered he had quit 3 feet from gold, and he resolved to never quit again no matter what obstacles he encountered. The 13th principle addresses the 6 ghosts of fear, which Hill identifies as the major obstacles that prevent most people from achieving success. These 6 fears are poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of love, old age and death. Hill devotes considerable attention to analyzing each fear, explaining how it manifests and providing methods to eliminate it. He emphasizes that worry is a form of sustained fear caused by indecision, and that the antidote is to make decisions promptly and firmly and then stand by them. The fear of poverty, Hill explains, is the most destructive because it paralyzes reasoning, destroys imagination, kills self-reliance, undermines enthusiasm and invites failure. This fear manifests in indifference, indecision, doubt, worry, overcaution and procrastination. The antidote is desire backed by definite plans and an absolute refusal to recognize the possibility of failure. The fear of criticism robs us of initiative, destroys imagination and prevents self-expression. This fear manifests in self-consciousness, lack of poise, weak personality, inferiority complex, extravagance and lack of ambition. People fear what others might think, what others might say, to such an extent that they never take the chances necessary for success. The antidote Hill suggests is to develop self-confidence through the knowledge that what other people think is far less important than what you think of yourself. The fear of ill health often connects to fear of poverty because illness can lead to financial disaster, but it also stands alone as people worry constantly about imagined ailments. This fear manifests in hypochondria, constant self-coddling, intemperance, and susceptibility to suggestion. The antidote is to understand that most illness begins in the mind through negative thoughts and that cultivating positive thoughts about health actually improves physical wellness. The fear of loss of love is particularly destructive in relationships where jealousy and suspicion destroy trust and create the very loss that was feared. This fear manifests in jealousy, fault-finding, and gambling with life, health, and happiness. The antidote is faith in oneself and others and the understanding that love given freely without fear or manipulation is the only love worth having. The fear of old age brings misery because people fear the loss of freedom and financial security that old age might bring. This fear manifests in apologizing for one's age, developing an inferiority complex, and killing initiative. The antidote is to view every stage of life as having unique advantages and to understand that age brings wisdom, experience, and perspective that youth cannot possess. The fear of death Hill argues is unnecessary because death is inevitable for everyone, and therefore fearing it is pointless. This fear manifests in constant worry about dying and paradoxically a failure to live fully because of that worry. The antidote is accepting death as a natural part of life and focusing energy on living purposefully in the present moment. Hill concludes his discussion of fear by noting that indecision is the seedling of fear and that indecision crystallizes into doubt, and the two together blend into worry. The antidote to all fear, he insists, is decision, action, and faith. Make decisions quickly, change them slowly if you must change them at all, and refuse to accept the negative thoughts that feed your fears. Throughout Think and Grow Rich, Hill emphasizes several overarching themes that tie all 13 principles together. First, thoughts are things and they have power to create material reality. Whatever you hold in your mind consistently with emotional intensity and backed by faith will eventually manifest in your physical world. This isn't wishful thinking, Hill argues. This is natural law observed consistently in the lives of successful people. Second, success requires burning desire, definite purpose, specialized knowledge, organized planning, and persistent action. None of these by themselves is sufficient, but together they create an unstoppable force. You must know exactly what you want. You must want it with intense emotion. You must acquire the knowledge needed to get it. You must create definite plans for acquiring it, and you must persist through all obstacles until you achieve it. Third, the mind is your greatest asset and controlling your thoughts is your most important skill. Hill repeatedly emphasizes that you become what you think about most of the time, that your outer world is a reflection of your inner world, and that by taking control of your thought life through auto-suggestion, through selective association, through reading and studying uplifting material, you take control of your destiny. Fourth, no one succeeds alone, and the mastermind principle is essential for great achievement. You need the cooperation, the knowledge, the support, and the combined mental power of others who share your vision and who work with you in harmony. The right alliance can multiply your effectiveness 10 times, 100 times, or even more. Fifth, failure is temporary unless you accept it as permanent. Every successful person Hill interviewed had experienced multiple failures, sometimes devastating failures, but they refused to interpret these as evidence that success was impossible. Instead, they viewed failure as feedback, as lessons, as opportunities to revise their plans and try again with greater wisdom. The only real failure, Hill insists, is quitting. One of the most powerful aspects of Think and Grow Rich is that Hill doesn't just present theory. He provides specific practical exercises and methods that anyone can apply. The 6-step method for transmuting desire into its monetary equivalent, the instructions for auto-suggestion, the guidelines for creating a mastermind alliance, the techniques for developing persistence. These aren't abstract concepts. They're concrete actions that produce measurable results when applied consistently. Hill also addresses an important misconception that many people have about the title Think and Grow Rich. This book, Hill clarifies, is not just about monetary riches, although it certainly includes those. Riches in the broader sense include loving relationships, good health, peace of mind, fulfilling work in the sense that your life has meaning and purpose. The principles in this book apply equally to any form of riches you desire because at their core they're about mastering your mind, aligning your actions with your values and persisting until you achieve your definite purpose, whatever that may be. As we reach the conclusion of this comprehensive exploration of Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, it's worth reflecting on why this book, written over 80 years ago, remains relevant, powerful and transformative for millions of people around the world. The reason is simple: human nature hasn't changed, the principles of success haven't changed, and the power of directed thought backed by faith and persistence hasn't diminished. If anything, in our modern age with unlimited access to information and connection, these principles are more applicable and more powerful than ever before. The tragedy Hill observed, and which remains true today, is that most people go through life never discovering their true potential, never pursuing their dreams with intensity, never applying these proven principles to their own circumstances. They drift through life accepting whatever comes, reacting to circumstances, complaining about conditions, but never taking control, never making decisions, never developing definite plans, never persisting through obstacles. And then they wonder why success seems to come easily to others while eluding them. But now you know better. You've been exposed to the same principles that created more millionaires, more successful businesses, more transformed lives than perhaps any other success philosophy in history. You understand that success begins with a burning desire, a definite purpose that consumes your thoughts and drives your actions. You know that faith developed through auto-suggestion can move mountains and overcome seemingly impossible obstacles. You've learned that specialized knowledge organized through mastermind alliances can compensate for any lack in your current abilities. You understand that imagination is the workshop where all achievement is first created before it appears in physical form. You now recognize that organized planning translates desire into concrete action steps, and that persistence is what separates those who achieve from those who merely attempt. You've discovered that your subconscious mind is working constantly and that you can direct it through repeated emotionally charged thoughts toward your chosen goals. You understand that sex energy properly transmuted becomes creative energy, and that your brain can tap into sources of intelligence beyond your individual knowledge. You've been introduced to the power of the sixth sense, that subtle intuition that guides you toward opportunities and away from dangers. Most importantly, you now understand that fear in its various forms is the enemy of achievement, and that decision, action, and faith are the antidotes. You know that thoughts are things, that you become what you think about, and that controlling your mind is the pathway to controlling your destiny. The question now is not whether these principles work, because Hill spent 20 years proving that they do, interviewing hundreds of the most successful people of his era and documenting their common practices. The question is whether you will apply them, whether you will make the decision right here, right now, in this moment, to take control of your mental life, to define your purpose with crystal clarity, to develop burning desire backed by unwavering faith, and to persist no matter what obstacles appear in your path. Hill warns throughout the book that these principles require effort, they require discipline, they require consistent application over time. This isn't a magic formula where you think positive thoughts for a few days and suddenly wealth appears. Rather, it's a complete reprogramming of your mental habits, a fundamental shift in how you think, how you perceive opportunities, how you respond to setbacks, and how you organize your daily actions. The people who transform their lives with these principles are those who commit completely and permanently to living by them, day after day, week after week, year after year, until success becomes inevitable. One of the most overlooked aspects of Hill's teaching is his emphasis on the power of decision. Hill notes that analysis of several hundred people who had accumulated fortunes beyond the $1 million mark disclosed the fact that every one of them had the habit of reaching decisions promptly and of changing these decisions slowly if and when they were changed. People who fail to accumulate money, Hill observed, without exception, have the habit of reaching decisions very slowly, if at all, and of changing these decisions quickly and often. This insight is crucial because indecision is actually a decision. It's a decision to let circumstances decide for you. It's a decision to remain where you are. It's a decision to accept whatever life brings rather than demanding what you want. The moment you make a firm decision about what you want and you commit fully to that decision, something changes in your psychology, in your perception, and seemingly in the opportunities that present themselves. Hill couldn't fully explain this phenomenon, but he observed it consistently in successful people. Hill also emphasizes the importance of selectivity in what influences you allow into your mind. He advises that you should carefully choose the books you read, the people you associate with, the conversations you engage in, and the thoughts you entertain, because all of these are programming your subconscious mind either constructively toward your goals or destructively away from them. This principle is particularly relevant today in our age of constant information bombardment, social media, news cycles, and endless distractions. The person who wants to succeed, Hill would argue, must become fiercely protective of their mental space, refusing to allow negative influences, pessimistic people, or fear-based information to pollute their thinking. In fact, Hill observed that successful people had the habit of making it a practice to surround themselves only with people who were success-conscious, optimistic, and supportive of their goals. They avoided like the plague negative people, chronic complainers, dream stealers, and those who take pleasure in pointing out why things won't work. This isn't about being unrealistic or ignoring legitimate concerns. Rather, it's about protecting the fragile seedling of desire and faith until it grows strong enough to withstand the harsh winds of doubt and criticism. Hill shares another powerful insight from Andrew Carnegie about the importance of going the extra mile, doing more than you're paid for, rendering more service than is expected, consistently providing value beyond what's required. Carnegie told Hill that this habit is one of the surest paths to advancement and wealth, because when you consistently over-deliver, you distinguish yourself from the 95% of people who do only what's minimally required. Moreover, Carnegie explained, the law of increasing returns means that value given eventually comes back multiplied, though not always from the same source or at the same time. This principle runs counter to the common mentality of trying to get as much as possible while giving as little as possible. But Hill's research demonstrated conclusively that the greatest fortunes were built by people who reversed that equation, who gave more than they received, at least initially, knowing that the balance would eventually shift dramatically in their favor. This requires faith, it requires patience, and it requires a long-term perspective, but the rewards are substantial. Hill also discusses the critical importance of learning from adversity and from temporary defeat. He notes that every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit for those who maintain a positive mental attitude and who search for the lesson hidden in the setback. This doesn't mean that you should welcome failure or be careless in your planning, but it does mean that when failure comes, as it inevitably will at some point, you should examine it thoroughly, extract whatever wisdom it offers, adjust your plans accordingly, and move forward with renewed determination. Many of the most successful people Hill interviewed could point to a specific failure or crisis that ultimately became the turning point in their success. Some experienced financial ruin that forced them to rethink their entire approach, leading to breakthroughs they wouldn't have discovered otherwise. Others experienced personal tragedies that gave them a depth of empathy and understanding that became invaluable in their work. Still others were fired from jobs that they thought were their careers, only to discover that they were being freed to pursue their true calling. The key distinction Hill emphasizes is attitude, specifically how you interpret and respond to adversity. Two people can experience identical setbacks. One becomes bitter, defeated, and gives up, while the other becomes better, stronger, and more determined. The difference is entirely mental. It's a choice about how to frame the experience, what meaning to assign it, and what actions to take in response. This choice, more than almost anything else, determines whether you will succeed or fail in your lifetime. Hill provides a fascinating discussion about the power of the master mind, specifically how it relates to marriage and close personal relationships. He notes that the right marriage partner can multiply your effectiveness and your happiness, providing emotional support, practical assistance, and mental stimulation that enhances every aspect of your life. Conversely, the wrong partner can drain your energy, undermine your confidence and sabotage your dreams, either deliberately or simply through lack of harmony. This is why Hill advises that selection of a life partner should be done with the same care and deliberation that you would apply to selecting a business partner, because in many ways marriage is the most important mastermind alliance you'll ever form. Hill also addresses the importance of concentration, focusing your attention, your energy and your resources on one definite purpose rather than scattering yourself across multiple objectives. He observes that a lens can focus sunlight so intensely that it starts a fire, but the same sunlight diffused over a wide area produces no such effect. Similarly, your mental energy concentrated on one major goal produces extraordinary results, while the same energy divided among many goals produces mediocrity. This doesn't mean you can't have multiple interests or pursue balance in your life, but it does mean that you should identify one primary purpose that commands the majority of your attention and your effort. One of the most practical sections of Think and Grow Rich addresses the challenge of procrastination, which Hill identifies as one of the most common causes of failure. Procrastination usually has its roots in fear, particularly fear of criticism and fear of poverty. People put off making decisions, taking action or committing fully because they're afraid of making mistakes, afraid of what others will think, afraid of losing what little they have. The antidote Hill explains is courage backed by definite plans and the understanding that the pain of regret from not acting is far greater than the pain of failure from acting boldly. Hill observed that successful people make decisions quickly because they know what they want, they have definite plans, they trust their judgment, and they're willing to accept responsibility for the consequences. They don't wait for perfect conditions, they don't need everyone's approval, they don't require absolute certainty. They simply decide, commit and act, then adjust as circumstances require. This habit of decisive action becomes self-reinforcing because each decision builds confidence and each action provides feedback that improves the next decision. Another powerful concept Hill introduces is the idea of a definite chief aim in life, a single overriding purpose that gives meaning to all your activities and provides a measuring stick for all your decisions. Without such an aim, Hill argues, you're like a ship without a rudder, blown about by every wind, responding to every current, never reaching any meaningful destination. With a definite chief aim, however, you have clarity, you have direction. You have the ability to say no to distractions and yes to opportunities that align with your purpose. Hill suggests that you write out your definite chief aim in clear, specific language, stating exactly what you intend to achieve, by what date, what you'll give in return, and what plan you'll follow. This written statement becomes your personal constitution, a document you review daily that keeps you focused, keeps you motivated, and keeps you on track when distractions arise. Over time, this practice programs your subconscious mind so completely that opportunities related to your aim begin appearing with almost magical frequency, not because the universe is conspiring in your favor necessarily, but because your mind has been trained to recognize and respond to relevant opportunities that you previously would have missed. Hill shares the story of Henry Ford and his determination to produce a V8 motor in a single block. Ford's engineers told him repeatedly that this was impossible, that the laws of physics didn't allow it, that it couldn't be done. Ford simply instructed them to keep working until they figured it out because he had decided that it would be done. After months of failed attempts, the engineers finally discovered how to accomplish what they had believed was impossible, and Ford's determination revolutionized the automobile industry. This story illustrates Hill's principle that what the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve, even when experts say it's impossible. Hill also emphasizes the importance of acting as if failure were impossible, of assuming that success is inevitable, and of thinking from the end result rather than from current circumstances. This is a challenging mental discipline because your current circumstances are immediately visible, tangible, and demanding of your attention, while your desired future exists only in your imagination. Yet successful people, Hill observed, had mastered the art of dwelling mentally in their desired future while taking actions in the present to close the gap. This practice, often called mental creation, precedes physical creation the same way an architect's blueprint precedes the actual building. You must first see yourself clearly in your mind, already in possession of what you desire, already living the life you want, already enjoying the success you seek. And you must see this with such clarity, such detail, such emotional intensity that your subconscious mind accepts it as real and begins working to make it manifest in physical reality. Hill provides specific guidance about the best times to practice this mental creation. The most powerful periods, he explains, are just before sleep and immediately upon waking, because during these times your conscious mind is less active and your subconscious is most receptive. If you develop the habit of holding your desired outcome in your mind as you drift off to sleep, your subconscious continues working on it throughout the night, often presenting you with solutions, insights, or creative ideas when you wake. Similarly, if you reinforce your mental image first thing upon waking before the day's activities clutter your mind, you program yourself for success throughout the coming day. Hill also addresses an important question that many people have about whether it's selfish or wrong to desire wealth and material success. His answer is unequivocal. There is nothing wrong with desiring riches provided you intend to use them constructively to provide security for yourself and your family, to fund worthy causes, to create value for others, and to live a fuller, richer life. What's wrong, Hill argues, is poverty thinking, the acceptance of limitation, the refusal to develop your potential, the squandering of your talents, because these represent a rejection of the opportunities and abilities you've been given. Moreover, Hill points out that wealthy people create opportunities for others through the businesses they build, the jobs they create, the products and services they provide, and the innovation they fund. The person who builds a successful business employs hundreds or thousands of people, provides valuable products that improve lives, and generates wealth that can be used for philanthropy and community development. Far from being selfish or greedy, the pursuit of wealth, when done ethically and with right motives, is actually one of the most generous things a person can do. Hill also discusses the concept of accurate thinking, the ability to separate facts from fiction, to distinguish between important and unimportant information, and to organize facts into definite plans of action. He notes that very few people engage in accurate thinking. Most people accept opinions as facts. They confuse wishful thinking with reality. They're influenced easily by propaganda, and they fail to verify the information they receive. Accurate thinking requires effort. It requires that you question assumptions, seek evidence, consider alternative interpretations, and test conclusions against reality. One practical application of accurate thinking Hill suggests is to examine all information from the perspective of your definite major purpose. Ask yourself, does this information help me achieve my goal, or does it distract from it? Is this fact relevant to my success, or is it merely interesting? Does this belief serve me, or does it limit me? By constantly filtering information through this lens, you develop the habit of focusing on what matters and ignoring what doesn't. Hill also provides valuable guidance about choosing a vocation or business opportunity that aligns with your natural talents and interests. He notes that you're far more likely to achieve outstanding success in work that you enjoy and for which you have natural aptitude than in work that you tolerate only for the paycheck. The highest achievements come when talent and passion intersect, when your work doesn't feel like work but rather like play, like something you would do even if you weren't paid, because it engages your deepest interests and allows you to express your unique abilities. This doesn't mean, Hill clarifies, that you should wait until you discover the perfect career, or that you should quit your current job impulsively in pursuit of a dream. Rather, it means you should thoughtfully consider what work genuinely excites you, what skills you possess or could develop that would be valuable in that field, and what steps you could take to transition toward that work while maintaining your current income. Many successful people, Hill found, started their eventual careers as side projects or hobbies that gradually grew until they could become full-time pursuits. Hill emphasizes throughout the book that age is no barrier to success, that poverty is no barrier, that lack of education is no barrier, that past failures are no barrier. The only real barriers are those you accept in your own mind. History is filled with examples of people who achieved extraordinary success starting late in life, starting from poverty, starting with minimal education, starting after repeated failures. What these people had that others lacked was definiteness of purpose, burning desire, unwavering faith, and absolute persistence. In fact, Hill argues that adversity can actually be an advantage because it forces you to develop resourcefulness, creativity, determination and resilience that those who've had everything handed to them never develop. The person who has struggled, who has overcome obstacles, who has failed and gotten back up has developed muscles both mental and emotional that the person with an easy path simply doesn't possess. This is why so many great achievements come from people with challenging backgrounds. They had to become strong, resourceful and determined just to survive, and these qualities became the foundation for their eventual success. As we near the end of this comprehensive journey through Napoleon Hill's masterpiece, it's important to address one final principle that Hill considered essential, the principle of cosmic habit force. Hill believed, based on his research and his own contemplation, that there exists a universal law similar to the law of gravity that fixes and perpetuates the habits of all living things. This law ensures that what you do repeatedly becomes easier, becomes automatic, becomes part of your nature, whether those habits are constructive or destructive. The practical implication is profound. If you repeatedly practice the principles outlined in this book, they eventually become automatic habits requiring no willpower, no conscious effort, just natural behavior. Your habit becomes to think in terms of possibilities rather than limitations, to make decisions quickly and confidently, to persist through obstacles, to maintain faith in the face of contrary evidence, to transmute setbacks into learning and to keep your mind focused on your definite major purpose. When these behaviors become habitual, success becomes not just possible but inevitable. Conversely, Hill warns, if you allow yourself to develop negative habits, procrastination, indecision, fear-based thinking, accepting defeat, blaming others, these too become fixed by cosmic habit force and they create an equally inevitable trajectory toward failure. This is why Hill emphasizes the importance of conscious choice, particularly in the early stages before habits become fixed. You must deliberately choose the thoughts you'll think, the actions you'll take, the people you'll associate with until these choices become automatic habits. If you take only one insight from Think and Grow Rich, Hill would want it to be this: you have within you right now everything necessary to achieve whatever you truly desire. You have the ability to think, which gives you the power to create in your imagination. You have the ability to choose, which gives you control over your mental attitude. You have the ability to persist, which gives you power over temporary setbacks. You have the ability to associate with others, which gives you access to any specialized knowledge you might lack. And you have the ability to take action, which is the bridge between desire and achievement. The only question that matters is whether you'll use these abilities deliberately and persistently in service of your definite major purpose, or whether you'll allow them to atrophy through neglect. The choice is entirely yours, the power is entirely yours, and the responsibility for the results is entirely yours. This might seem like a heavy burden, but Hill viewed it as liberation because it means you're not dependent on luck, on connections, on inheritance, on anyone's permission. Your success depends solely on your own decision, your own faith, your own persistence and your own actions. Now, before we close, I want to personally encourage you to take action on what you've learned here today. Don't let this be just another video that you found interesting but ultimately forgot. The information you've received in this comprehensive summary has the power to transform your life completely, but only if you apply it, only if you make the decision right now to implement these 13 principles starting today. Choose one principle, perhaps the practice of writing out your definite major purpose and reading it twice daily with emotional intensity. Start there, master that, then add another principle and another until you've integrated all 13 into your daily life. Remember, Napoleon Hill spent 20 years studying the most successful people of his era to extract these principles. He interviewed Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison and hundreds of others who had achieved extraordinary success. You've just received in condensed form the wisdom that took Hill 2 decades to compile. The question is, what will you do with this gift? Will you treat it like entertainment, interesting but ultimately without impact on your life? Or will you recognize it for what it is, a proven roadmap to whatever success you desire in whatever form you desire it? If you found value in this deep exploration of Think and Grow Rich, I encourage you to like this video, to subscribe to Audiobook Library, and to share this content with someone who needs it, someone who's struggling, someone who's searching, someone who's ready to transform their thinking and their life. By sharing this knowledge, you're not just helping that individual person, you're contributing to the elevation of human consciousness. You're helping to spread the message that success is possible for anyone who's willing to think correctly, to believe deeply, and to persist relentlessly. And if you truly want to dive deeper into these principles, I strongly encourage you to obtain your own copy of Think and Grow Rich, the original 1937 edition, and to read it not just once but multiple times, because each reading reveals new insights, new applications, new depths of understanding. Hill himself recommended that his book be studied, not just read, that you take notes, that you complete the exercises, that you test the principles in your own life, and that you make this wisdom a permanent part of your mental framework. The world needs what you have to offer, the unique combination of your talents, your passions, your experiences, and your perspective. But the world cannot benefit from what you never develop, from what you never express, from what you never manifest, because you accepted limitations that don't really exist. Think and Grow Rich gives you the tools to break through those imaginary limitations, to tap into your true potential, and to achieve whatever you've been dreaming about. This is your moment, this is your time, this is your opportunity to make the decision that will change everything. Don't wait for perfect conditions, don't wait for more resources, don't wait for someone's permission. Start now, start today. Start with what you have, where you are, and let your burning desire, your unwavering faith, and your absolute persistence carry you forward until you've achieved everything you've set out to accomplish. Thank you for investing your valuable time in this comprehensive journey through Napoleon Hill's timeless wisdom. Remember to like, subscribe to Audiobook Library, and share this message with those who need it. Your success story is waiting to be written, and it begins with the decision you make right now in this very moment. Think, believe, and take action, because as Napoleon Hill proved beyond any shadow of doubt, whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. Now go forth and grow rich in every sense that matters to you.